Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. This is Reservations, and I'm Jeremy Blair.
And I'm Rain Wayland. So I'm low key annoyed. We went to the grocery store today, and I got like something on my shirt, my white shirt. And yeah, I'm so annoyed. Like I was getting back in the car. Go ahead.
Here's what's interesting about this is that you could have just changed shirts.
Yeah, I know.
I had split up on my shirt, and I changed it.
That's true. But yeah, no, I was getting back in the car, and I kind of had to squeeze between Ashley's car and this truck's side view mirror, and they just went.
Damn.
Yeah.
Did you get any cool cereals at the grocery store today?
No, I haven't even finished my Boo Berry.
But yeah, I'm still working on my first box this season. I think I got maybe it's less than a third. I would say I probably got a fourth left.
I should probably eat it quickly before it gets stale. But
yeah, for sure.
Know,
because after Blueberry, I go Frankenberry. So,
dude, and we're never gonna get freaking Fruit Brute back. I'm real disappointed about that.
Yeah, but no, they got this new one, this lady one. I don't
know. Yeah. Well, speaking of breakfast, I've started doing this thing now where I actually try to wake up with enough time before I get to work to have breakfast. Oh. And I eat those Kodiak protein waffles. They're pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah. This is just riveting podcasting.
Yeah.
So then after I have breakfast,
this is what it would be like if we had one of those regular podcasts that everybody has. That it's a stream of consciousness. Like, let's just talk about nothing,
Yeah. Nothing gets resolved. Nothing is said.
Yeah. That's what it would be like. So.
Well, and see, speaking of podcasts, that's where I feel like Jake Johnson's podcast is really good, where it is stream of consciousness, but they actually have callers who call into the show.
Yeah, that's right.
I love Jake Johnson's podcast, dude. Well, and I just love Jake Johnson. I mean, he's awesome.
Yeah.
He had Max Greenfield on a while back, and I don't know if it was like intentional, but they essentially slipped back into Schmidt and Nick.
It's funny.
It was like, because like Max Greenfield was talking about like, I guess like a lizard that he was going to give to Jake Johnson for Jake Johnson's son. And he's like, yeah, we got rid of it. And he's like, Jake Johnson's like, what do you mean? He's like, we had to get rid of the lizard. Okay. And he's like, what is it too expensive to take care of a lizard? Like, and it was very like Schmidt and Nick.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think they're going to ever be able to escape those characters. Ever.
Probably not. I mean, maybe, who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. But welcome back, everyone. Good way to start the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome back. So Jeremy, you've seen this movie before, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My pick. Okay. I couldn't remember if you'd seen the movie or not. But well, for those of you who didn't see last week, which unfortunately were not many, this week was my pick. And I picked the docudrama heist film American Animals. So this was my second time watching the movie, and like I remember that they kind of pull off the heist, but I forgot like how almost everything went wrong from the start, which was kind of funny in a little bit of a sense that just everything went wrong almost immediately.
Yeah, this was also, I think, my second time seeing it. And I came to a very different, came at it with a very different perspective this time.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, so that'll be interesting to discuss. But yeah, you want to hit him with that quick synopsis, and then we'll hop into this thing.
Yes. Okay. Synopsis. So, our film American Animals takes place in 2003 in Lexington, Kentucky. Um, Four friends, Warren Lipka. I have their names pulled up. I just didn't remember it. Warren Lipka, Spencer Reinhard, Chaz Allen III, and Eric Borsick, all kind of decide that they're going to steal these very priceless and very rare books from the 19th century from the college that Spencer and I believe Eric attend, Transylvania University, because Spencer hears that they're so rare that potentially they're worth millions of dollars. And so Warren thinks like, hey, well, wouldn't it be interesting if we were able to pull this off? So they go through months of planning, research of watching heist films, until the culmination of the actual heist, where they, like I mentioned last week, kind of pseudo pull it off. We'll get to that in a second. And it almost goes wrong immediately. They are caught virtually within a week. They did not get away with it very long. And they all went to prison. But the other part of this synopsis is how the film plays out, which is we see the reenactment of the film, but also we are cutting back to the real guys who they're interviewing, almost like a documentary. And the movie melds really well this concept of a docudrama with a biopic. And the use of unreliable narrators and each guy's sort of memory of the events, and that's American Animals.
Yeah.
In a nutshell. So, excuse me. Where do you think we should begin with this, buddy? Because I was thinking maybe we should begin with the idea of having the real guys be interviewed as sort of like a docudrama.
Sure. I am almost positive that this idea started as a typical traditional documentary. The director, Bart Layton, directed probably one of my favorite documentaries I've ever seen, called The Imposter, a few years ago, or a few years before this. And it is amazing. Highly recommend anyone check it out. It is, and they made a film about it as well. Not Bart Layton didn't make the dramatized, movie version of it, but the subject of the documentary, his name is Frederick Borden. He was a creative consultant on the movie, but that doesn't matter. So in The Imposter, he uses reenactments a lot. He leans very heavily on reenactments, and of course cutting to the real people, talking head style, like he does in this movie. I guess I'm of the opinion that the more compelling the story, the more interesting and better the documentary is, and therefore I would say that The Imposter is a better movie. The story is more compelling. There are twists and turns that you don't see coming, where you think that you understand like who the villain of the whole thing is, and then really, yes, he was wrong to do what he did, but then he's turning it on the. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it is nuts. I can't recommend it enough. So The Imposter, watch that. But with this one, with American Animals, it's so interesting because he's using obviously reenactment in a similar way, but it's in a traditional film format, which is unusual for documentary filmmaking. Normally, you get your typical reenactments where, the people barely look like the people and they're acting out things that our talking heads are saying normally. So that's taken from that testimony, which this is also taken from that testimony, and in some cases they play on, and I told him this, and then they cut to the dramatization and they say the exact same thing he just said, right? So it plays on that in a sort of meta fashion. And of course I like the interactivity with the real people and the actors who play them. Well, I guess it would mainly be Warren, but Warren interacting with Evan Peters.
But there is a scene where Barry Keoghan, looks at the camera and is lip syncing to what Spencer is actually saying, and then we cut to Spencer.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting. I wasn't expecting that at all when the first time Ashley and I saw the movie. Because, the movie begins with them getting in their old man makeup for the heist.
Right.
And then we cut to Barry Keoghan's character at his was it his college interview or
I don't know. It could be his college. It could be the like the school in the college he was applying to. It could be a number of things. I wasn't really certain about that.
But then we cut to the real Spencer being, like, oh, I'm Spencer Green, and I was like, wait, I thought this was a movie. Is this a documentary? And then as we continued to watch, I was like, oh,
it's both.
It's both.
Yeah. Which is clever. And I really like that. I think that, if you have the budget, it definitely, I'm sorry if you hear my daughter crying. She sounds not very happy in the other room. But so, like, if you have the budget, I recommend it because I think it makes the reenactments more interesting and more compelling to watch. Like an Unsolved Mysteries episode, you're like, Jesus Christ, you know what I mean? What did this cost? $10? But with this, I think that you're more engrossed in the story because you see people you recognize, like Evan Peters, who is, very popular, especially at this time. Barry Keoghan was just now starting to get, a little bit of notoriety. And I can look right now, actually. Because Blake Jenner, who plays Chaz, was in Everybody Wants Some. And he was the main character in that. And so, that was a popular movie, I think. I saw it in theaters. I don't know if anybody else did, but that's something I loved. Oh, I think he was also in Glee. I guess that'll do it. But, you're seeing people that you recognize. This is an interesting story. And, you're getting a documentary which, brings some validity to the story, but then you also get the high budget, film quality dramatization, which is interesting, and especially the way that they're playing with it, with people's perspectives and memory, and redoing a scene when someone gives a different side of the story or a different opinion or a different version of that event. I really like that.
Like what you just mentioned in my example last week, when we meet Warren, and Warren, is like, I remember him telling me at a party, because it was cool outside, and then we cut to them at a party, and then Spencer goes, well, we were we were on our way to a gas station. I remember because it was cold outside, and then we cut to the same thing, but now they're in a car driving. And then, of course, that has our favorite example of the real Warren being in the car, and Evan Peters going, is this how you remember it? And him going, this is how Spencer's saying it happened? Then let's just roll with it.
Yeah.
And then the real Warren's gone.
Yeah, it's an interesting take on a documentary, or an interesting take on a biopic, or however you want to, whichever you think is more prevalent than the other. However, this film is also really interesting because I am now of the opinion, again, the first time I saw it, I was like, this is rad,
Uh-huh.
But now I'm watching it again, and I'm thinking, I don't like them very much. Kind of at all. And I think the reason why they want to do it is complete bullshit.
Yeah.
I think that, and it's hard because there's nuance to it, because I get it and I understand. I understand why Spencer wants some sort of, story. He wants some sort of like either hardship or obstacle or something, because in our popular culture, most stories we hear, most origin stories of a great artist or a great actor or director or whatever, they come with overcoming adversity when we hear their story, or how they got into the business, or how they became so well known or so well renowned. He gives examples of Monet and Van Gogh, but there are countless examples. However, I think we forget, or we don't really think about it, or it's not popular to say or to discuss, but not everyone did that. Not everyone got into their field of expertise, or no one became famous or infamous or well-renowned or respected through adversity. Not every time. And sometimes I appreciate hearing that, because, I think, like Spencer, a lot of us hear those stories of overcoming adversity, and we're like, that's what you need. You need to come from an abusive household growing up, or you need to come from poverty, or you need to overcome, some sort of illness or mental illness, or blah, 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 blah. Or, you could be like, I'm going to give an example, and it probably won't be very popular, but like Pete Holmes, for instance. Pete Holmes talks about, and so do I, but Pete Holmes talks about he was in a loving 2-parent household, upper middle class. They loved him very much. They respected him, and they respected his decision to be a comedian, and blah, 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 blah. It's sometimes it works out like that. You don't hear that very often because it's not interesting.
Well, yeah, because then, with the Pete Holmes example, he didn't start facing adversity until he got older.
Right.
As evidenced by his show Crashing, where he talks about how his marriage fell apart. And,
right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Right.
So for context, everyone, Spencer, who's played by Barry Keoghan in the movie, and also, of course, we see the real Spencer, is going to college to be an artist, and he wants something else. Like, I like the example you used, a good origin story. And how he kind of words it is, when the light bulb kind of clicked, like, these works of art are worth millions of dollars. He went fishing with Warren, with Warren, for essentially for Warren to say, like, yeah, that's a really good idea. And then Warren took the bait. But yeah, I agree, that we all want something extraordinary to happen in our lives, and sometimes it just doesn't happen, but people still end up living very full lives. But to the point you made about rewatching this and being like, I really don't like these guys. I wouldn't say necessarily I liked them. I definitely, kind of the point of our title is Ashley and I, when we first watched the movie, we both were like, they're just bored white guys who were just like, you know what if we pulled a heist?
Yeah.
I do think that maybe they really should have looked at this more realistically, which we'll get to later, but I don't think that they were bad people necessarily, but I just
No,
think
but
they were
just
definitely selfish.
yeah, my wife likes listening to this podcast called Wine and Crime. Okay.
Okay.
Each episode they pick a topic, like, I don't know, art crimes, for instance, or I forgot what episode this was on, but they talked about this this incident with these boys stealing the art from the college, and they're sort of uh, angry justice warrior white ladies at times, but
Uh-huh.
all they could talk about was how misguided and how privileged they were, and how they were using their privilege to believe that they could pull off a heist because they're bored, like you said, or because they thought that the worst thing that could happen was they'd get caught and they'd have a cool story to tell.
I agree.
And so it changed my perspective on it a little bit, because I hadn't thought about the movie in years. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess that's not too far off, right? And then I watched it again. And I go, yeah, they might be onto something, even though sometimes they're a little over the top with their criticisms and their social justice. But in this case, I think they might be onto something. And I think that's no more evident than at the very end of the film, which I know we're pushing ahead a little bit. I apologize. But their after prison lives are fine. You know, like, it didn't ruin their lives like it should have. I think, and we don't even have to put a race thing to it. If we just want to put socioeconomics to it, if they were a lower socioeconomic group of people, going to prison would have ruined their lives forever.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, we're kind of giving everyone the ending, but there's still so much to talk about this movie. Yeah, all four guys served 4 years or 7 years in prison. They were. I have the trial up. So they were all found guilty in 2005. And so, which means they got out in 2012. And in the end of each of their interviews, it says like what they're doing now, which is Spencer still lives in Lexington and he's working as an artist. Warren lives in Los Angeles and is back in college, or no,
yeah, he's going to school for filmmaking.
Chaz lives, I think, also in Los Angeles, and he's a fitness instructor writing a book on prison fitness regimen.
Yeah.
And then Eric is living in somewhere else, because
he bounces around a lot, yeah.
But he's trying to find work as an author.
And he wrote the book. He wrote American Animals, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So it didn't ruin their lives. I would definitely say they learned a lesson.
Sure.
But it didn't ruin their lives, and I would say their biggest mistake in the heist is, of course, hurting that poor librarian, Betty Jean Gooch.
Yeah.
But I pulled up that she did, she suffered a lot of psychological trauma,
of course,
but she did forgive them eventually.
I don't see how.
I know, especially because in that sequence she was so harsh on them, and I was like, damn. But I guess at some point she forgave them, because I think she recognized that at the end of the day, like what we've been saying, they weren't thinking, and I'm sure they probably repeated this a lot during their trial, which is, you know, they weren't trying to hurt anyone.
Mm-hmm.
They just wanted to, yeah.
Right.
I guess I am somewhat defending them. I'm not
Well,
meaning to.
I think what the documentary and the film does correctly is it doesn't sugarcoat what they did to BJ, which I really appreciated because it is the most egregious thing they did.
Yeah, I agree.
It is horrible, and it is probably what got them the 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it should have been more. They really did a number on her, and it's just horrible. And it was for no reason, and it was, and the fact that they had planned it. They had planned to subdue her in some way, premeditated, wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think they watched too many movies. They watched The Killing and Rafifi too many times, and which by the way they were watching The Killing, but Rafifi was on their
Yeah,
list.
yeah.
Yeah,
When the camera pans by all the movies they rented, man, what a time!
I know.
Remember renting movies?
I do.
Um, uh, but anyway, yeah, I think they watched Rafifi too many times.
Yeah, or something, because they didn't think about the implications of it. I guess besides, I mean, Eric is portrayed as, being very hesitant and very much, I don't want to be in the room when you do this. All of that.
Yeah.
Warren, of course, needing the assistance, but yeah, I think that I mean, Haley was saying while we were watching it, she goes, I don't like that these guys got a movie.
Well, and I think, I'm glad we brought that. I'm glad Haley brought that up. I think it was more to, like you said, not sugarcoat what they did. We're not praising these guys for what they did, because you're right. What they did to BJ is egregious.
Right.
I think it was more the filmmaker Barry, right? Is his name?
Yeah.
I think Barry more so just wanted to tell this story. Like,
Sure.
you guys have been out of prison for 6 years now. Tell your story. Because I did read that he didn't have any of the actors meet their counterparts, because he didn't want them sympathizing with them.
Mm-hmm.
Which again, I think his sole purpose was, let's just tell the story. Tell the story the way you remember it.
Yeah.
I don't want you to sugarcoat. I don't want you, because we do see a lot of emotion from all of them, especially Warren, when they are remembering what they did.
Yeah.
And of course, now that they're, been out of prison for 6 years, I'm sure they all are very remorseful of what they did. But I think it's funny that Haley has to, I don't like that they got a movie.
Yeah, she doesn't like it. She goes, they don't deserve it. And I was like, yeah, I get it. I get that perspective for sure. Cause, watching it, and like every documentary, most documentaries like this have a rhythm and have a pattern where it's super fun. They're cool guys. They're having a good time. The way they're telling the story is lighthearted, and they're sort of goofing around about it. Like, our introduction to Warren is his tattoo of the T-Rex trying to turn off his ceiling fan, which is very funny. But he's a goofy guy, and then of course when it gets to that moment with BJ, when she's being subdued, he's embarrassed and really sad about it, and very remorseful, and Eric, they don't even, of course it could be editing, but they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to look at the camera. They don't, they look away. They're ashamed. And all that fun, goofy stuff is gone.
Yeah, I do. I really, I really love the structure of the film. That the first half is kind of like, oh, like isn't it cool? We're planning a heist. Aren't we so cool? And then right when the heist starts to happen, the whole tone shifts.
Yeah.
The tone of the documentary, the tone of the actual movie shifts, and I remember sitting there just last night watching the movie. I was just like, man, like this went from 10 to 0 in an instant.
Yeah.
And I think Barry, that was the smart thing to do. I mean, obviously, of course, he didn't want, I think it would be really kind of fucked up if he kept the lighthearted tone, like, oh yeah, and then we subdued this lady, aren't we so quirky?
Yeah.
I think it would be.
Yeah, they wouldn't have done that, of course, but
No,
but yeah, I kind of wish they had they had added more of, they didn't take into account how heavy the books are.
The books, yeah.
Because I think there's like 4 or 5 of them, and they were only able to take 2 because they're, they weigh a ton.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're paintings.
Yeah, they're massive paintings. Yeah, I kind of forgot that they struggled so hard with that. Now, I do want to mention, because we've talked about heist films, on the show before. We talked about Rafifi, and in typical heist format, we know the plan, so that way when we know what goes wrong, we know it's going wrong.
Right.
Their plan goes wrong almost immediately.
Yeah.
And I love that we see Warren's version of the plan, like that it's going to go like so smoothly, and BJ isn't really going to even get hurt. Like we're just going to just knock her out real quick. It'll be fine. And then we see the real heist, and it's just
it's chaos. It's a mess. I think that people don't realize what it takes. I mean, you kind of, to do something like this, you can't be a regular person. Like, you can't care.
Yeah.
And these, I mean, to their credit, they care. They did feel very bad. They didn't want to. They felt like they had to for some reason. Again, the entire reason they want to do any of this is ridiculous. But they felt like to get it done, they have to, hurt and subdue BJ Gooch. Now, by the way, I want to give a shout out to Ann Dowd, who I love so much. I've seen her in a ton of stuff, most notably The Leftovers, which she's incredible in. But she's also, I mean, she can do anything. There's a movie called Compliance, which I highly recommend as well. And she's incredible. I'll just leave it at that. But Ann Dowd and the costume department, I want to give a shout out to them, because we don't even need Miss Gooch's name prompted when she pops up at the end of the documentary, because she's wearing the same thing Ann Dowd is wearing. So they dressed her like Miss Gooch during her interview, which I really liked. So we know exactly who it is. And yes, her name popped up, but we don't need it. So I really like that. That's a little thing, but it was appreciated. I also want to give a shout out, hold on, to I can never remember his name. Udo Kerr, or Cure. He's one of the mysterious men that Warren meets with in that bar. He's been in several things, mostly like Werner Herzog projects, or I think he's been in a Lynch thing. But he's immensely recognizable. His voice is recognizable. So seeing him in the movie, I'd forgotten he was in it, and I was like, oh, that's so weird that he's in it. But so shout out to him as well. I like that they preface at the end of the documentary, they say, by the way, Warren might be full of shit.
Yes. I love that throughout the movie, we're shown that these guys are unreliable. But yeah, I love that after all of this, after we see the sequence of them getting caught, all the guys are like, I don't even believe he actually went to Amsterdam.
Yeah.
I don't think he even met with anyone. And even Spencer's like, the guy we met in New York, I don't know if that was a guy that I saw or a guy that Warren wanted me to see, and
Mhm.
I just love that even the real Warren's like, well, they're just gonna have to take me at my word.
Which is interesting because there's a similar sort of twisty thing at the end of The Imposter. So I like that they're finding ways to pull the rug out from under you, where you're like, well, wait a minute, maybe Warren is full of shit. Maybe he didn't go to Amsterdam. Maybe he never did find a buyer, or because Warren doesn't seem like the guy who could do that. After knowing him for 2 hours, I don't think Warren didn't seem like the type to know. I mean, he's sort of a burnout petty criminal who doesn't do sophisticated white collar crimes like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I love that the documentary is pretty, and even the real Warren's like, it is what it is. So, okay, I want to shift for just a second. I want to talk about the actors portraying the real guys.
Okay.
I think they nailed it.
Yeah.
I think every single, granted, yes, Barry Keoghan doesn't really look like the real Spencer Green.
None of them do. I don't think that's super important. I mean, I would say Blake Jenner is pretty close.
Yeah, Blake Jenner's pretty close to the real Chaz.
Yeah.
But I think they nailed it on the casting, through and through.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is, none of these guys, save from Evan Peters, didn't even meet their counterparts.
Yeah.
But I feel like they just nailed their cadence, their everything. Especially Barry Keoghan, with Spencer, especially Spencer's indecision to get out of this. Like, I'm done. Like, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. Like, I'm done.
Sort of buyer's remorse on his part. I think that I think he realized that it's like, maybe this is a bad idea. It's too late now.
Yeah. So. Yeah. It's real Baby Driver situation right there.
It's his fucking idea.
Yeah. Yeah, which is, what? We'll get back to that. Hang on, we'll get back to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and of course, I love Evan Peters. I think Evan Peters is just a powerhouse of an actor. I jokingly told Ashley last night, I was like, I feel like Ryan Murphy saw this movie and was all like, okay, we don't need Evan Peters to smile for another 7 years. He's having too much fun. I need to ruin his life.
I mean, this is a conversation for a different episode, but Ryan Murphy is proving that I think we're done. We're coming to the end of an era when it comes to how we perceive and how we interact with true crime. I think Ryan Murphy has sort of put an end to that societally, I think.
Let me be honest. Okay, hang on, everyone. He's stretched himself too thin. He's got so many shows in the pipeline right now. I'm like, dude, you can't facilitate all these shows. He's got the Monster Show on Netflix. He's got Feud. He's got American Horror Story. He's got American Crime Story. Now American Sports Story. He's got American Horror Stories. That fucking new one on ABC, Dr. Odyssey or some shit. He's got too many shows.
I think what I mean by that is not that he is incapable of doing these shows. I think how he is presenting these stories is now not something audiences want anymore. I think, I mean, again, this is a conversation for a different day, but I think the way that, it's like Aaron Hernandez is a fucking scumbag and I don't give a shit, right? Jeffrey Dahmer was a monster and a horrible person. I don't want to, you know what I mean? And the same with like the Menendez brothers. I mean, they're pissed about that too, the real guys.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So
Ashley and I were talking about that.
I think that Ryan Murphy is single-handedly changing the way audiences are now perceiving and consuming true crime, which might be for the better. I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I mean, he's not doing it on purpose, but anyway. So yeah, Evan Peters, incredible. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
That being said.
Yeah, I think, honestly, one of my favorite performances of his is this movie. I think he knocked it out of the park of being the lighthearted, kind of funny guy, but also sort of like, like the bad kid that like every parent worries about you hanging out with. But I think he really kind of captured Warren's essence. And again, he's the only one who got to meet his counterpart. Granted, it was only for like that long.
Right.
But I think Evan he crushed it. And again, I blame Ryan Murphy. I think Ryan Murphy has ruined him. Watching him in interviews post that Dahmer show, he seems so broken. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
We need Evan Peters to smile again. Marvel tried with putting him in WandaVision. And Ryan Murphy was like, nope, he needs to be broken. But anyway, point being, I think the cast was fantastic. I think all these guys had really great chemistry together. I tried to find some sort of trivia, like how Barry and Evan felt about like working together, because I think Barry and Evan have a really good chemistry together.
Yeah.
Especially with the scene of Spencer telling Warren, "I'm done, I'm out," and Warren Evan's acting of going from like really kind of pissed off, like, no, you can't just leave now, to like, dude, like, trust me, like, everything's gonna be fine, we're gonna get away with this, like, trust me, kind of. It's just so impressive. But, and also one of my favorite scenes, it makes me laugh, it shouldn't laugh because it's a very serious scene, when Warren's mom's like, yep, I'm divorcing your father, and he bangs on the back window and screams at his dad, like, are you fucking crying?
Well, it's because, it was established, I think very, very cleverly established, that Warren's dad is this alpha male who's pretty hard on Warren about certain things. Like in the scene, it was sports specifically, but I'm sure it was other things as well. And so he's showing emotion in that scene, and I'm sure Warren is not allowed to show emotion in that house, and so that's why he's yelling at his dad. What I assume.
Well, and of course later when we see Warren's real dad in the interview segments, his dad clearly, I guess, has let go of that kind of masculinity.
I would hope so. But who knows?
Yeah. Okay. What was it that I said we were going to come back to? I had it locked in. I was like, we're going to come back to that.
I should have wrote it down.
Yeah, probably.
This is some inside baseball for you guys, but we don't write stuff down.
No, we probably should.
I take notes every now and then, but I don't take notes while we do this.
It'll come back to me.
We'll see.
Okay. So, okay, I want to go back to the dramatization of the heist.
Okay.
It was so goddamn stressful.
Yeah.
Which, again, wonderful filmmaking on Barry's part. because the plan is falling apart.
Mhm.
Their exit strategy gone. They thought that they could just cut through the basement, and they're out scot-free. They can't do that because the basement has no exit, or at least not that they can see, because
Mhm.
it's dark down there. So they have no choice but to cut through the actual first floor of the library. And God, dude, and I love Warren trying to hype up Eric. Like, we're
Mhm.
gonna have to make a run for it, man. We're gonna have to run for it. And he's like, all right, come on, like, we got to do this. And Eric's like, no, we're done. We can't. Like, but he kind of has no choice but to keep going along with it.
Mhm.
God, it was so fucking stressful, man.
Yeah, it was stressful, especially with subduing BJ. God damn it.
Mm.
With the gloves, like Eric trying to put the gloves on, and just the whole thing is very stressful, and it's very chaotic, and it's not organized, and it's nothing like they imagined it would be. Which is the point. That
Yeah.
these guys aren't, these highbrow, sophisticated gentleman bandits. These guys are, kids that are making a huge mistake, that are way in over their heads, and
Yeah.
are ruining their lives, essentially. What we would,
Yeah.
and then of course, not really, but
Yeah, especially when, because according to Warren's contact in the Netherlands, they need to have these products appraised at an auction house, and then they'll accept, or authenticated, and then they'll accept them.
which
And
I think, okay, this is where it kind of like, I don't get it to me.
okay,
Which I have a problem with this, because even in 2003, people know where these things are. Like, they know these books are in the University of Kentucky's, like, it's theirs. It's in their possession. Like,
yeah,
people know, and I'm sure it is cataloged and it is recorded where pieces of art, especially ones that are very rare and expensive, are housed, and who owns them, or who has the rights to display them, or like, even in 2003 you could probably look that up. I mean, it couldn't be that hard. So
yeah. I mean, especially because we see Warren Googling stuff on a computer. So
I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, to think that no one would know, to think that you go to an auction house and they look at it and like, oh wow, where'd you get this? And it's like, we fucking know where you got this.
well, and I personally, I think she knew,
Sure.
because I mean, there were already news reports that these books were stolen. So I think a part of this junior deputy is what they call her. I feel like she knew, especially because she asks him, "Oh, well, how did Mr. Beckman get these in his possession?"
Mhm.
I think she was testing the waters.
I think that's my problem with every art heist is, well, now what? Everyone who cares about art knows where this is. I just
mhm.
don't get it. I've never understood that with art heists. So,
Yeah, yeah.
it's sort of like, I don't know. It's not worth it, man. To go steal something no one gives a shit about that's still
So what
expensive.
you're saying is you really can't get into National Treasure?
Yeah, no, it's completely unrealistic. No, I
But
love
it's got our
I love both National Treasure movies, if you can believe that.
yeah. I like Book of Secrets, man.
I
I
thought
really
so.
hope they do a third one and pay all that off, but we'll never get it.
We'll never get it.
But yeah. So the auction, the junior deputy is like, yeah, we can't do anything right now.
Yeah, no,
Sorry.
fuck it.
Um,
Yeah.
and again, I think she knew, and this is when we learned that Spencer really kind of fucked them.
Yeah.
Oh, that was it. That
Oh.
it was Spencer's plan, and he was trying to renege. We'll get here. Hang on. We'll circle back to that. But yeah, Spencer essentially shot them in the foot by giving them his cell phone number.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Spencer's plan. This was essentially Spencer's plan. The real Spencer Green even kind of says so, that he or Warren says so, that he he baited me and I took the bait. And Spencer even said, like, once Warren gets an idea for something, he doesn't usually let go that easily. And I think, look, I know I kind of pseudo defended these guys at the beginning of the episode, but I do think Spencer knew what he was doing. I think he was like, you know what? Let me see if I can leave these breadcrumbs for Warren. And then this can be Warren's idea, not my idea. But at the same time, it's like, Spencer, we know you're the one who brought it up.
Yeah.
Like, you laid out these breadcrumbs. So, so now would you say, especially when we meet Warren for the first time, he says, like, they all said that, like, I was the ringleader, and I wouldn't agree to that at all. Would you say that Spencer was the ringleader?
It's interesting. This is now assigning more blame on one of these guys, right? So I would say that initially Spencer, Reinhard, by the way, not Green.
My bad. Who's Green?
Not a big deal. So I would say Spencer initially was the one to set everything in motion, but after a while, at least in terms of the reenactments they were doing with the actors, it seemed like Warren was, taking more and more control over planning and all of that. So maybe not initially, but it became more of Warren's thing, idea and all of that, than it was Spencer's, even though it was all his fault, Spencer's fault. Because without him, they wouldn't be doing this at all.
Yeah, and they kind of make it seem, at least in the reenactment parts, that Spencer was just like telling him this just to tell him this, just to be like, hey, like, the university has $12 million worth of valuable and rare paintings, but then, when we get the interviews, the real Spencer makes it seem like, yeah, I was kind of hinting, like, hey, maybe.
Which, again, makes it entirely his idea.
Yeah.
So I have another problem.
Okay.
And it's with Chaz.
Okay.
Chaz has no reason to be a part of any of this. I don't understand his motivations. I don't think that they did a good job explaining his motivations, because he was already successful and fine and doing well, and he doesn't need this. So I didn't, and it kind of seems like he didn't like these guys anyway. So it's, to me, they didn't do a good job in explaining his role in all of this, because to me it just seemed like he said yes for convenience of the plot, which I know isn't true because he did it,
Yeah, as far as I could gather, they only really wanted to bring Chaz into this because Chaz had money,
right?
So he could facilitate certain aspects of the plan. And I'm sure they probably had to tell him something to get him to say yes. But yeah, you're right. Chaz, even the real Chaz, didn't really convey why he wanted to be involved in this.
Yeah, he didn't explain why he got involved, because if I were him, I would have been like, no. Like,
the only thing I can think of is that maybe the allure of the quote-unquote adventure, like Warren, you seem pretty confident we're going to pull this off. Let's see if we can pull this off.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It could boil down to just how it was with everybody else. Is they want a story, they want this exciting adventure, and they want to overcome something or do something of notoriety, even if it's negative. Which, to Gooch's point, they could have done literally anything else.
100%.
But yeah, that was, while watching it this time, I was like, what the fuck is he doing? Like, he has no business being with these guys. And it kind of seems like he doesn't even, again, like them. Like, he tolerates Warren and doesn't know the other guys at all. So I don't know. It's weird, but I can't say that I don't believe it because it happened. So
Yeah.
I guess I just need more information. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, and that makes sense, and it could have been very well that like the real Chaz maybe didn't really want to say, or maybe he felt like, the court documents are public record. If you really want to know why I got involved, just read those.
That's a good point. Or maybe he's just
But
embarrassed. I mean, I would be.
I mean, you know what? Maybe that's it too. Here he was, the most successful out of all these guys, and he still decided to get involved. So maybe he was just embarrassed that because what did his mom say, that like he owned real estate at 16 years old?
Yeah. I don't know.
That's insane.
That is. Yeah. I don't own real estate now.
I know, man. Yeah, I don't know. And if I'm going to be honest, I like Chaz the least.
Okay, cool.
I think he's kind of an arrogant prick, but
sure.
It's interesting. In almost every heist film, you need an arrogant prick on board.
I suppose.
It's almost like Warren was like, you know what, man, we need the arrogant guy. Like who's the most arrogant guy we know? Chaz Allen.
They all said Chaz.
Yeah. Now, okay. I will say, I do want to mention this. We've talked about like that going to prison didn't really ruin these guys' lives, which it didn't. But what I will say is it did ruin their chances. Sure. Eric wanted to go into the FBI. There's no way he's going to the FBI now.
Not anymore.
Not with a felony prison sentence on his record.
And legit prison sentence. Yeah, legit prison time.
Yeah. No. Yeah, no way he's getting in the FBI now.
And I mean, I guess you're right. I painted it like their lives are perfect. I mean, there's no way Chaz wants to be a fitness instructor.
No.
There's
probably not.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way, when people say like, oh, he's writing a novel, that just means Eric doesn't have a job,
Yeah. And that probably explains why he moves around a lot.
Yeah, because to give an example of this, and because I assumed you write a book, it's somewhat successful, that's it, you're set for life. I am a big fan of Jason Pargin. He wrote John Dies at the End, and he wrote I'm Starting to Worry About This Black Box of Doom, which is out now. It's not a plug. But he makes he's very charismatic and very fun on TikTok, and so he makes all these TikTok videos. And there was one video he made where he talks about being a writer and being an author and what that looks like. And he said that he just recently got to do it full time. He said that for the majority of his books, and he's written a bunch, that he had a job, like he had a day job. So when Eric is trying to write a book, and I guess he wrote American Animals, I assume.
I looked it up while you were speaking. Yes, he did write a memoir called American Animals.
Okay.
But I'm looking at the description and it says as seen in the major motion picture.
I see.
Which means I think he was still writing it when they made the movie.
Well, that's silly. Then he's just unemployed. So his life isn't great either. I'm confused by the sentence, Spencer lives as an artist. I don't know what that means. So, there's no, I don't want to say there's no way that he's making a living on art, because a lot of people do. I don't know what that means. Does he sell his art to galleries? I don't think that's how it works. So I don't know. So this is right. And of course, Warren is in school. So, in fact, I can look at. Okay, that makes sense.
It could mean. Sorry, I looked it up and just Googled what does it mean to live as an artist, and
Is it similar to Eric?
kind of like I can't find anything.
Well, I will say though that if they were filming in Spencer's house, he has a garage, which from our perspectives means he's a millionaire because he has a house with a garage.
Well, I have an apartment with a garage.
That's a good point.
And a garage that's tied to like all the other garages in the complex. But yeah, no, I think it means that maybe he is making a living as an artist.
Must be doing well. He has a house. Know. That's pretty cool.
Or he may be just doing okay.
Right.
He may be living comfortably, but maybe not as comfortably as he was suspecting he was going to.
That's all I can ask for, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess what I should amend what I said at the top, because I mean, no, it did not ruin their lives, because again, I do truly believe that if they were started out as a lower socioeconomic class, or even if, you know, this is obvious, but if they were a different race, there is no way they would have made it out the way they did.
I agree.
They are living in a utopia compared to what would have happened, in my opinion, if they were in either of those other situations.
I agree. I fully agree, you know. I don't necessarily want to chalk it up to they got lucky, because they didn't get lucky. I would say that they were spared. They were spared something far worse. And I feel like I read, maybe I'm misquoting, I feel like I read that the judge not necessarily showed leniency, but was like, you know, you're good kids. Why did you do this? Kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because it must be like, I mean, probably besides Warren, it was probably their first offense for most of them.
Yeah.
I mean, we're introduced basically to Warren stealing from his previous job. So, yeah. I don't think Warren had a spotless record, is my assumption.
Or at least wasn't as clean as the rest of the guys.
Right. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the other ones, it's kind of like it's like if they didn't start off with like little petty thefts, you know, like their first one was like like trying to just go for broke, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
But, well, buddy, are you ready to wrap up?
I am. I agree with, I mean, justice for BJ Gooch. I can't imagine being in that situation. And she deserved way better. I completely agree with her that they chose the wrong way to find some sort of adventure or notoriety, or, you know, I guess like manufactured adversity. I think she was right. They could have literally done anything, and they chose to do something negative, which they shouldn't have done. I'll again double down. I don't like him. And I don't know if I mean, I do agree with Haley a little bit with they shouldn't have gotten a movie necessarily, but it is an interesting story, so I completely understand.
Well, here's an oops I forgot.
Okay.
I did read that Barry met all these guys while they were incarcerated and came up with the idea while they were incarcerated.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Bart, not Barry. Bart Layton.
Oh, we've
right?
been calling him Barry the whole
I
goddamn
know I'm
episode.
reading this like from the desk, and it doesn't matter. My eyesight's terrible. I'm probably going blind. But wait, yes, Bart Layton. So, yes, he did meet with them and got the idea. I did read that.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, I mean, it wasn't so much a Richard Linklater, Bernie situation where, where that's a whole other story.
Well, and Linklater kind of did the same thing with Bernie.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not necessarily that extreme because Bernie like lived with Linklater for a while.
Wait, like the real guy?
Yes,
Holy shit.
where that's sort of, I don't know, like that's teetering on Ryan Murphy-esque. Let's not glorify these people too much,
Yeah.
Mr. Linklater, because at the end of the day, he is a murderer. So
yeah.
But I mean, I don't want to say at the end of the day these guys are criminals because that's not necessarily true either. They just made a mistake and they made the wrong decision.
Yeah, I would agree.
That's all that is.
I would agree. I would agree. They, like Ashley and I said, just a bunch of bored white kids.
Yeah.
In
some cases, rich white kids.
Yeah.
Warren, I don't think was, but the other three were.
Yeah. Or at least well off.
Yeah.
Bored kids. But you know what, man? I really enjoyed the movie.
Yeah.
Like I don't necessarily felt like we were glorifying them in any way.
Absolutely
not.
But and neither was Leighton. I don't think he was glorifying them either. Much the same that he wasn't glorifying the subject of the imposter. He's just telling their story through their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And also with this film specifically giving an objective take on the heist itself, in terms of what the trauma they inflicted on BJ, which I appreciated because that's not something that you can really sugarcoat and that you shouldn't. So
I agree.
Yeah, I think definitely. I know I said a bunch, but watch The Imposter. It's awesome. It's so good. I think right now it's on Freevee. It says Peacock, Pluto. So it's available.
Yeah. All right, buddy. Well, what are we talking about next week?
That's a good question. So I changed our list again. I keep doing that. Because I'll think about it a while and I look at the list and I get less excited about some, and then I'll get more excited about other ones that are on it. And I was like, "Oh, this will be better," Okay. I'm trying to switch them accordingly, so I'm not going too crazy. With completely throwing out the vibe or whatever.
Okay.
So in this case, I replaced one with a film that I'm excited to watch. I have not seen it yet. But this is a good excuse to jump in because I love Stalker so much. Stalker is on Letterboxd. It is one of my 4 favorites. And Andrei Tarkovsky, I think, is a masterful filmmaker. And so next week, we are discussing the 1972 sci-fi classic Solaris. So yeah, excited about that.
So I've never seen it either. After we did Stalker, I kind of fell in love with Tarkovsky and try to grab up every Criterion that was available. I still need Andrei Rublev and Stalker itself.
Okay.
But I have Ivan's Childhood, Mirror, of course, which I fucking love.
Yeah.
Mirror. And I got this.
Yep.
And I remember reading about it because I was like, do I really want to get this one. Like, Stalker was great. Mirror was on another level.
Yeah.
I was like, but do I want to get this? And then I read more about it, and it's been remade.
Yes, and when most people think like, oh, this like this very what was a philosophical, poetic, artistic sci-fi film that's sort of slow and introspective and all that, and then Steven Soderbergh makes it with George Clooney, you kind of think it's going to be bogus and it's not going to be very good, and you would be wrong because I've seen it and it's very good. And people
the remake,
yes, and people who have seen both say that both are very good. So I would recommend the remake, and I normally, we'd say like, oh, it's completely different and it's, not very good or whatever, and it's, just Americanizing, the story. I think people would disagree with that, and it is very good, the remake. So
yeah, but yeah, but I was like, you know what? I'll take a chance. I'll get it. Still haven't watched it, so I'm excited to finally have an excuse to finally watch it.
Yeah, I'm excited.
But yeah, I'm excited too, man. It's been a while since we've done Tarkovsky.
Yeah.
Shit, how long ago did we do Mirror?
It's been a couple years.
Fuck, Mirror's so good.
I know, Mirror is very good. We bit off a little more. We'll get you a Mirror, but it's very good.
But I still had fun with that episode, man.
Yes,
that episode was fucking. I feel like we didn't even scratch the surface.
No,
but I still had fun with that one.
Like, sometimes I feel like when we do movies like this that we should have gotten our PhDs in philosophy or something to be able to fully understand.
I have one semester of psychology under my belt from high school. I think I understand how the world works.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, we'll see how this one goes. No matter what, it's going to be wonderful. I can't wait. Tarkovsky again is incredible. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, so am I, man. Well, everyone, we hope you enjoyed this episode on American Animals, and we'll see you next week for Solaris.